areal classification. According to me, all the three are complementary to each other. They give three different facets of language phenomenon. So all the three are equally important. But when we talk of family, naturally the first one is the most one, the genetic grouping. When we have more than one language, we need to group them. So there are, as I said, that if we concentrate on the origin or the taking the vocabulary or any aspect of the language, if we can trace them to belong to one common source, common inherited source, then we get a family, and that is the basis for grouping languages on the family point of view, and that is the most important one. It is similar to the concept of family in society. So any one person, for that matter, can belong to one family only, genetically speaking, genealogically. By other way, one can belong like marriage and all, but the secondary, for us, the primary one, the birth in a family gives that concept, genetic grouping. So similarly, in case of language also, a language can belong to only one family and it cannot belong to more than one. So like for instance, Tamil can belong to, is identified as belonging to Dravidian family. It cannot be grouped under either Indo-Aryan, Tibeto-Aryan. Similarly, other cases can be quoted. So this grouping is unique. Once a language is identified as belonging to a particular family, it will remain there without any change. It cannot be altered. Of course, the extreme cases may be there where due to pressures of other societies, it may change in due course of time. It may take a couple of millennia. It may not happen suddenly. So that's an extreme case. So we have a Dravidian family numbering minimum 25 languages up to 70 if we take so many varieties and all into account. Then we have the Indo-Aryan. From the population point of view, Indo-Aryan is much more bigger compared to Dravidian. Indo-Aryan has speakers of around almost 74% of India supposed to speak one of the Indo-Aryan languages, whereas around 24% or maybe 25% of the population speaks a Dravidian language. Then the remaining 1.5% shared by Austroasiatic and Tibeto-Burman languages. So the point is that I will not mention all the languages of each family. Listing itself will take quite a bit of time, and as most of you are all teachers, these things are quite known. Now, one of the important thing is when languages are there, and we said they belong to a family, what are the futures they share? That is a very interesting one we have to consider. Now, it's very, we need to look at the fact that language means we are concerned with the spoken language, not with the written version, the written form of it. Speech is the primary for us. So the language is speech. So this speech has certain characteristic features. Whatever the language, as long as it's spoken, it contains sounds, speech sounds. Speech sounds are primary. Because, and also, these sounds are produced in using our vocal organ. There is a setup of vocal organ, starting with the lung and with the oral cavity, nasal cavity, the sounds come. So there is a limit for it. So, however, given any two languages, we find there are variations between them, differences between them. So, no two language will be exactly same. There will be some differences. If you take, for instance, Kannada and Tamil, for that matter. Well, on one side, we say that Dravidian languages make a clear-cut distinction as far as vowels concerned between short versus long. And at least to Proto-Dravidian, they establish 5 short vowels and their long counterparts, so it becomes 10. However, the present languages, in addition to them, we have more in some cases. There are some modified ones. So that way, there are, when we talk of characteristic feature of Dravidian, we say that in the vowel system, it is 5 short, 5 long basic system is there. So that is very important. And interestingly, for Proto-Dravidian, we established only voiceless consonants as phonemes, whereas in languages like Kannada, Telugu, and in many more, the voiceless voice contrast has become phonemic. Similarly, even because of the later influence of Sanskrit and the languages, particularly in Kannada, Telugu, we see the presence of aspirated series, which is absent in Tamil. And in fact, in Proto-Dravidian, we don't establish this. So like this, we need to look at the sounds, we need to look at the grammatical features, and then identify the families, and then the developments, because when we look at languages, it is not like, of course, it is like running water, but it is not exactly running water. The comparison is limited, because in case of running water, every moment or every second we can imagine the water changes, whereas that is in the running water, not in the lake. Okay. Whereas in case of language, it is question of centuries which takes to change. It is not as if that like water. But change is there, change will be there. And what we have today as languages was not the same some 1,000 years back or 2,000 years back. In fact, our history of Dravidian languages starts maybe some 2,000 years back. And gradually we see the developments, the movement, development, and all those things. So interestingly, when we look at these 4 language families, leaving aside Andamanese, Indo-Aryan, Dravidian, Austroasiatic, and Tibeto-Burman, there are some common features and there are differences. The common features would be obviously sounds are there, definitely. Of course, there's without sound, we don't have a language, therefore that is not a point at all. When you come to even look at the phonology part, I mentioned about Dravidian, we have length contrast as phonemic, only the voiceless series as phonemic, whereas in Indo-Aryan, for that matter, we have both these phonemic. That is, voicely. In fact, in case of Indo-Aryan, rather than the length quantity contrast, it is the quality contrast is more prominent. In fact, even in Sanskrit, we see that there is an asymmetry between short vowels and long vowels. And so even in the modern Indo-Aryan languages, we see a similar situation. In fact, the other Indo-Aryan features are length contrast is secondary, but voiceless voice contrast is primary. Aspirated, unaspirated contrast is primary. All the 4 places of articulation like bilabial, alveolar, palatal, velar, and also, of course, retroflex series. In fact, there is one, retroflex is one of the most important features of Dravidian languages. So that should be taken into account. So in Indo-Aryan, we have these two aspirated series, and voiceless voice contrast is very important. In fact, these have been reconstructed to Proto-Indo-Aryan stage. It's interesting to observe that similar to the Dravidian languages where we have Toda, Kotha, and some of the languages which have undergone lots of changes as far as phonetics is concerned, like contraction of vowels and all that, which gives rise to consonant clusters. In case of modern Indo-Aryan languages, there are a couple of languages like Sindhi, Punjabi, even Gujarati have developed certain sounds which are not found, not available in the older stage or in the proto stage. Like Sindhi is known for its implosives, Punjabi is known for tones, Gujarati is known for murmured vowels. So these features have developed in later. Why they developed, how they developed, there's another matter, another aspect, but maybe we may not go into that. But generally, that's an interesting feature. But then we have to keep in mind, Indo-Aryan is spoken in a very vast area, from Kashmir to, say, southern India, touching to Goa, Konkani, and from northern part, from Pakistan to Assam. So it's a huge area. In that, because of the hugeness, there is no uniformity. There are lots of changes between them. So in one area preserves the contrast, certain contrasts, whereas the eastern, particularly eastern area, like Bengali, Assamese, Wadiya, in fact, one can add Maithili, Bhojpuri, etc. They have lost many features, probably due to the influence of Tibeto-Burman languages. So that's another. So within a family, there are subgroups. In fact, even in Dravidian, we say South Dravidian, which contains the major languages like Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada. And then in Central Dravidian, we have Telugu. Leaving these four literary languages, all other languages are non-cultivated languages where there was not much of writing till recently, or no writing systems at all, and only they have been adopted recently. So among the, and then maybe briefly I'll touch upon the Austroasiatic languages. In fact, for a long time, we should really start it from Grahason's Linguistic Survey of India. That is one source where we get a fairly comprehensive information about languages, because source of language, source of information about language is very important, and that is available there. That is the starting point as far as the Indian languages are concerned. In fact, he succeeded quite to a great extent in providing classifications, identification, and classification of the languages. Before that, some of the languages, Dravidian and Turanian, they call it Kolarian, were put together, and so it was assumed that they belong to the same group, but later, in fact, Max Müller was responsible for distinguishing the Munda and the Dravidian. So the Austroasiatic languages, which are supposed to be one of the indigenous groups of India, at least of North India, and they stretch from North India to Southeast Asia. which number more than 150 languages. But then they have been grouped into two subgroups. One is called Munda subbranch or the Kol subbranch, which is exclusively found in India, central, western, central, and eastern part of India. And the rest, the other main branch is called Mon and Khmer, under which there are more than 100 languages. They are spoken from Meghalaya onwards to Southeast Asia, up to Vietnam, up to Malaysia. So we have a vast group of languages. So in this, I will not really go into much of Austroasiatic, particularly Mon Khmer, but I need to mention that Khasi, which is spoken in Meghalaya, is one of the Austroasiatic languages or the Mon Khmer languages, and it's a very much different from the rest of the Indian languages. So in that context, I will mention a few words slightly later. Interestingly, all the present Munda languages or the Kolarian languages are spoken in hilly, mountainous terrains, which are not easily accessible, which was not easily accessible till recently. And because of that, they were always suppressed. That means they never came into limelight as such. So even though their numbers, at least some of them, like Santali, has 6 million speakers now, still it is not a dominant language in any state because of the fact that it is spread in states like Odisha, Jharkhand, West Bengal, and to some extent Assam. So when a community speaking a particular language is not concentrated in one area, the language and its culture also will not get really recognized, will not get opportunity to develop and to flourish. So this is the unfortunate situation as far as the Munda languages concerned. So only recently, this Santali is put into writing to some extent, and is taught in schools in some areas of Jharkhand, Santa, say in West Bengal, also in Odisha. But the local influences, local pressures are so great that not many want to study in their languages and also use their so-called native script, Old Chiki, which has been coined for it. Now, the fourth language family, which I would like to just touch upon, is Tibeto-Burman family, which is considered to be a member of Sino-Chinese. So the very words Tibetan Burman, Tibeto-Burman, indicate that these are the two major languages of this particular family. Interestingly, the speakers of this family numbering more than 200 as far as India is concerned. Outside, another 200 to 300 languages are there. Again, they're all living in inhospitable terrains. Imagine the Himalayan belt from Ladakh, there is Kashmir to Arunachal Pradesh to Tripura. The whole belt, we have these Tibeto-Burman people. They speak innumerable languages. In fact, only one interesting feature, important feature, is presence of tones as tonemes in these languages. Of course, I should clarify that not that every language, every Tibeto-Burman language has a tone as distinctive, but majority of the languages, at least of Northeast, like Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura, Arunachal Pradesh, have tones, minimum being 2 in Manipuri, 3 in Konyak, according to some 4 or 5 in Angami. So like this, tone is a distinctive feature in these languages. That's one of the important features. As far as classification is a very complex one, they have not been really done much because of the hostile terrain. The languages have not been studied fully. The comparative work has not progressed much. Only Benedict, Matisov, and some scholars have been working, but the progress is not much. One interesting feature about these languages is that it's a very interesting one. All the languages have, when it comes to the word order aspect, I would just like to mention, these languages have the end in verbs. So that is subject, object, and verb. In that order, we have the word order is very unusual, that irrespective of the language family, all the 4 language family, all of them have verb final endings. It's very unusual. So because of that fact, all our verb final languages, naturally, the corollary says certain things that they use suffixes and postpositions instead of prefixes and prepositions. So similarly, in phrases like a noun phrase, we have like modifiers like adjectives, demonstratives, numerals precede the head or the nominal rather than precede them, or rather than follow them. Also, the genitive precedes the governing noun. In the sentence structure, when we have subject, direct object, indirect object, and the verb, normally indirect object precedes the direct object. I'm sure the switchover may be possible in some languages. So it's not a very strong generalization as compared to the first 2. Similarly, the auxiliary verb follows the main verb in all the languages, but I'm sure most of you know Kashmiri is an exception where auxiliary precedes the main verb. Otherwise, most of the languages follow the pattern. Then we have explicators follow the main verb, and also it's possible to mention that time adverbials precede place adverbial, etc. So that way it's possible to mention. But interestingly, as far as the nature of the language is concerned, Dravidian is strictly a suffixal language, having only suffixes in morphological process. Of course, reduplication, echo formation will be there. In addition to that, we see that, as I mentioned earlier, the verb ends in the final position, and only one, in fact, among the verbs, only finite verb can occur in the final position, and non-finite verbs, of course, there can be more than one, can occur only preceding to the final verb, finite verb. So that's a very important feature. And in fact, when affixes like suffixes get joined, they are added one after another. So this is known as agglutination. So Dravidian languages are generally labeled as agglutinative. Usually 2 to 3 are always there, root plus case marking, number suffix plus case suffix. So, or in case of verb, we have verb root plus 10 plus person ending. In fact, the fact that person endings are there. It is more like agreement feature. It's a very interesting agreement feature. Dravidian is the subject agreement is very important in Dravidian. Whereas in case of Indo-Aryan, the Indo-Aryan is highly inflectional, we say, because in fact it moves on to fusional type. One affix standing for more than one function, so we say it is fusional. In fact, Indo-Aryan prefers uses both prefixes and suffixes. So that is the difference between the Dravidian. And the case of Munda languages is unusual that Munda languages have all the three affixes like prefixes, infixes, and suffixes. All the three are employed in Munda languages, and there is a strong agreement, both subject agreement and object agreement. So we use the word incorporation. So in the Munda languages, we have agglutination as well as incorporation. So these two features are very important as far as Munda language is concerned. Of course, the present Munda language structure, though it is verb ending, the reconstructed structure is supposed to be subject, verb, object. But because of the pressures of Indo-Aryan and Dravidian, that word order supposed to have changed to the subject, object, verb. So that element can be observed in when we have object incorporation, and which usually comes at the end of the sentence. Because of that, we assume that this word order change has taken place in Munda languages. Then we have, we may look at some of the other features. In fact, I should touch upon the Nahali. When we look at, so Nahali or Nihali, in fact, I prefer to use the word Nihali because the community themselves call Nihals or Nihal, actually from Nihal becomes Nihal. So I have used in my book Nihali, in fact, Nihali. Now, unfortunately, the present Nihali, the speakers number around 3,000. They are, as I mentioned in my book, they live in the district called Buldana in Maharashtra, northern tip of Buldana, close to the Satpura mountain ranges. So in those 6 villages which I mentioned, Jamud, Sonburi, etc., the Nahals speak this language, Nihali, whereas the Nahals are there elsewhere around the area, but they have given up their language. They have either switched over to Korku, which is the dominant Munda tribal language, or to Nimadi, or to one of the versions of Hindi or Marathi for that matter. So, as it is now, Nihali is highly simplified language. It's very difficult to identify, to show the relationship with any language. In fact, I mentioned that genetic classification implies and insists that a language as a person has to be identified with a family or family either is in the language or in the society. Similarly, we expect that Nihali also should be identified with a language, family, or with any language, at least like a sister or a brother. But unfortunately, we have not been able to do. Yes, it shows some elements of other languages. In fact, the place where it lives, where it's spoken now, we find Gondis people living around. Of course, Kolami is spoken, but a bit far off, but the Kolami speakers are not in big number, whereas Gondi speakers are in big number. Therefore, we expect that this Nihal might have got some features of that one. That's why it is true that that some of the vocabulary items like the word for two or for word for dog or number 4 show possible Dravidian connection. In fact, my friend Dr. Professor C. Ramaswamy used to tell me that there are many words which might have some connection with the Dravidian source. I fully agree with that. In fact, it needs to be worked out. When I prepared the manuscript, whatever I could do, I have tried to show, but there are many more. In fact, it's an open-ended list. In fact, I have that's why I have left the column of remarks open, available in the book, so that if one is interested, one can add more to that. In fact, it will be interesting. I'll be very happy if the language could be grouped with some clearly, logically, so that the isolatedness or the orphan type situation which is there now is resolved. In fact, it is unfortunate to use the word orphan, but in society we use it, you see. So similar to that, the present state of Nahali is like that. We call it an isolate because of lack of other terms. So I will just mention some of the words, particularly those who listen to this talk may think about those words, whether they have those words in their language or whether they know that in any other known language. For instance, for a word like child, the word is palsho, whereas in Korku, the immediate one is kon. For man is mansho. Of course, mansho, one can say it is manush from Marathi, but there's another term, kalto. I don't know whether it could be related to the Korku word koro. Koro is man in Korku. For people, the word is manta in Nihali, whereas in Korku, it is again the word Korku itself is people. Woman is kol in Nihali, dukri in Korku. Husband's mother or wife's mother is napyom in Nihali, whereas kainkar in Korku. Similarly, husband's elder brother is birtom in Nihali, whereas nivir kuinkar in Korku. The word for husband is atho in Nihali, whereas it is dota or sanate in Korku. In fact, the Korku words are very close to the rest of the Munda languages. So therefore, you find them in Santali, Mundari, and other Munda languages. Daughter in Nihali is Pirjo, whereas in Korku it is Konje. Son is Ejer or Nana in Nihali, whereas it is Konte in Korku. Brother's wife is Karyom in Nihali, whereas in Korku it is U or O. And brother's son's wife is Wari, probably it is Indo-Aryan. In Korku it is Kimin. This is about the kinship terms. You can say that at least these kinship terms are retained in Nihali, which probably do not show any connection with any known languages, whether Indo-Aryan or Munda or even Dravidian. I'll be very happy if somebody can show light on these things. In fact, already I touched upon the number. I may just repeat it. We have only 4 numbers in Nihali, so there's no number system. They only use Hindi numbers. Bidi or Bada is Nihali 1, Korku is Mia, whereas we have in Kasi, Mon Khmer language is Wei or she. But for 2 is Irar or Ir. In fact, our friend mentioned that in Dravidian we have a similar form. In Korku it is Bar or Baria, whereas in Kasi we have R. So Ir, R are very close. Then 3 is Moto in Nihili, but we don't have similar form in Korku. And in for 4 is Nalto in Nihili, reminding us of Naku in Kannada, are one of the Dravidian languages. Korku is Upun. Similarly, we find a lot of differences in animal word or other elsewhere, but surprisingly, the word order is very much similar at the word phrasal level or at the clause level. Therefore, I don't really go into that. This talk is very sketchy, and I'm not sure how far I did justice to the title, but I hope that scholars interested in this may raise questions, even send an email with the questions so that I could answer them. That will give me an occasion to ponder over the problems involved. I am very eager to see Nahali reaches its logical end of familyhood. Thank you for listening. I look forward to your comments.
Thanks, Professor Nagaraj.
Thank you,
a long
Rajendra.
time I'm hearing you. Yeah. I could say yes, a long time back, probably, yes.
Sorry, it's too sketchy. I couldn't. We spent some 15 minutes in arranging the system. So, yes, sir.
It happens. It happens. Now, Professor Nagaraj, shall I ask you a question? Hello? He's off or what?
Yes, sir. Yeah, sure.
Sir, please.
Yeah.
Nagaraj, I say,
No,
it so happened this language could not be associated with any families in India?
Yeah. I don't know.
Why
Why
is it so happened?
It's a surprising fact, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm still wondering actually.
See, in the world, there are around 50 languages of this type, isn't it?
Okay,
This Nihali is one, Burushaski is another, Kasunda is one more. Like that, there are many around the world. Why it happened is something puzzling. In fact, everyone should think about it. I'm also eager to know that. So more detailed study is needed, taking every lexical item, because of course, even in pronouns and elsewhere, there are differences which I could not go into that. Yeah, I look forward to that one.
Good evening, Professor.
Good evening.
Hello. I'm Ravi Shankar from Pondicherry.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
How are you, sir? Nice to listen to your talk, sir.
Yeah, my pleasure to meet you.
Yes, sir. Actually, you have opened up a new vistas in regard to the Nihali language. The thing is that when you say that this language doesn't show any affiliation to any other neighboring languages, but are there any cultural or social factors that they keep or retain that prevent them from mixing with any other languages, sir?
You see, they are around only 3,000 in number.
Yes, sir.
They are all landless laborers.
Yes, sir.
They don't have their own culture as such. They don't even have songs. They have lost their folklore. So day-to-day life is itself is a struggle for them.
Yes.
Therefore, in fact, during the Bhudan movement, Vinoba Bhave, some land was allotted to them, But unfortunately, as generally happens, the tribal people were given only rocky areas of some hillocks, which could not be cultivated.
Yes.
And they gradually gave up, and they preferred to become landless laborers. They work in the farms of other people, the dominant people.
Yes.
And in fact, even the education they have not liked very much, though there are ashram shalas. They prefer to keep their children in their homes with them only. They don't like to send their children to ashram shalas.
That is very interesting.
Yeah, even from when the child becomes slightly grown up, they start working in the fields. They enjoy working in the fields, or in fact, the livelihood depends upon that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so then the culture-wise, they don't have any strong culture as such, unfortunately. Yeah.
If such is the situation, Professor, will there be any danger for endangerment to this language by?
It is highly critical, sir.
Yes.
Highly critical language, because it's just the number is only 3,000.
3,000, yes.
The only silver lining is that they are all illiterates.
Yes.
Their families are very compact. They keep the children with them.
Yes.
So children pick the language very well. Once they become modern, so-called modern in the urban term, they become educated, start moving too much, then they start lose the language. But already the language has lost quite a lot. The number system is not there.
Yes, sir.
In public contact, they have to speak with another language. So that problem is there. I don't know how long it will remain. Just now,
sure.
not much really. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Professor.
I have a question about
please.
the language contact in the northern region. I know that one of the Dravidian languages in the northern region.
Malto, Kuduk,
Brahui, right?
Brahui, yeah.
So I also see some similarities in Nihali. You also mentioned about Nalguru, and there is about Nalku,
Naltho.
Ir also there. Some words like Nai and Nagam, they are all there in Nihali.
Right.
I don't know if we can just ignore them as an accidental similarity, because they're all vocabularies. There must have been some language contact. Can you shed some light on that? Between all these languages of the Dravidian, especially when there are theories like in Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Dravidian languages were there. Kind of theories are there.
Okay.
So, what do you think? About the language?
As far as Brahui is concerned, it is a bit too far. Okay, I mentioned Gondi.
Gondi, yes.
Gondi is also a Dravidian language. It's one of the major Dravidian languages, right? It is spoken in the Bastar and in the same belt, Vindhya belt, where these people also live nearby, right? So possible that they have been influenced by the words like Naltho, Mutho, Naltho, Nai, obviously Dravidian words. They could not have entered from Kannada. Okay, they must have entered from Gondi, which is very possible. Contact is definitely there, but you see, the problem with the words is that they are limited in scope. If we have some 50 words, 100 words, then maybe it's possible to say something. Some 3-4 words don't say, it doesn't take far, isn't it? I know I'll be happy if somebody takes up to compare this language with even with Brahui or other languages and see how far one can go. Thank you.
Sir, I am Professor Nadana Swabadi.
Yeah.
I am Professor Nadana Swabadi.
Yeah, please, sir. Pleased to meet you.
How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Sir, just I have a few questions.
Yeah, sure.
And since have you made Montho may be related to Munru in Tamil? Montho.
Yeah, once it can be related to Kannada forum, then it can be related to other Dravidian languages also, isn't it?
Another 2 questions.
Yeah.
Have you made any sound system of that language? Sketch,
Sound
any
system
sketch
is
at least?
very simple, sir. Yeah, in fact, I have discussed in my book, it is very simple. That's why I didn't go into those things. In my book, I have discussed all those things.
No. My question is whether it is similar to our Dravidian system or that system.
No, there is the length contrast is there. Length contrast is there.
Yeah.
Some extent of aspiration contrast is there. Therefore, that way, you see, it is not similar to Tamil for that matter.
Grammatical, any sketch of the grammatical system?
Grammatically also it is similar to, I mentioned that all the languages except Khasi have similar structure, SOV pattern. This language also has the same pattern, but there is no agreement in this language. You see, Indo-Aryan, Munda, Dravidian agreement is very important, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whether it is subject agreement or subject-object agreement, but in this language there is no agreement. So that future they have lost.
But in Malayalam also we have not necessarily.
That's right. That's right. A few languages have lost. Even Bengali has lost the agreement. But then when we try to look at futures, the fact that this language doesn't have, whereas some Hindi has, some extent Marathi has, Korku has, the surrounding languages, that becomes a significant future.
Yes, I see.
Isn't it?
Yes, sir.
I
thought something can be related to this grammatical system if you have, because grammatical system won't change very fast.
You see, look at the pronouns, they are quite different from the rest. Yeah, tense forms are different, interrogative forms are different.
No, that was not syntactic structure. I mean the syntactic structures and other these things. If they won't change much as far as the families are concerned.
Yeah.
That's why the basic factors.
But the elements, grammatical elements are important, isn't it?
Elements are maybe, but the structure, I mean the structure.
Is it the basic structure? As I said, all these languages have SOV. That pattern is there, yeah.
And morphological structure, and we have the prefix.
They're also same. In fact, I said modifiers precede the head noun, like Kannada or Tamil for that matter. Same way.
Prefix, suffix, and prefix.
In fact, a prefix is there, suffix is there. No infix in this. There's no infix in this.
Okay.
But the data is not much, because of that, it's difficult to say seriously about those things.
It's nice, sir. Anyhow, very good attempt. Very nice.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sir, Nair, sir. No, Nagaraja.
Yes, sir.
So I have one or two observations.
Sure, why not?
Is that you have said that Nepali is the only language isolate in India.
In India.
India, okay.
Yeah.
Number two.
If
I will continue it. Last day I had a conversation with Dr. C. Ramaswamy.
Okay.
He was telling that he has seen your book, CAL book.
Yeah.
And he suggests that there are many Dravidian words found in Nepali.
Yeah,
and,
I told you. In fact,
my question is that geographically Gondi is near to this language.
Yeah.
And you said there are influences also.
Possible.
Yeah, and this language is also having a subject, object, verb structure.
Yeah, same order.
But still, you say that it is the only language isolate. Why?
You see, just on the basis of word order, we cannot group a language belonging to a particular family.
Okay.
You see, Dravidian also has same word order, Indo-Aryan also has same word order, Munda language also same word order. Can you put all the three families into one?
But there is no genetic
That's the same way. You see, the genetic similarity affiliation comes from the vocabulary. The vocabulary had to go, sound changes, etc., have to be proved to belong to same family, isn't it?
Okay.
In this case, it's not possible. As the present data, it's not possible. In fact, I said a word like Joppo. Joppo means water. Of course, it might be from Sanskrit, Japa, Jala. Okay. But in the present Indo-Aryan languages or Dravidian language, we don't have any word of that type, isn't it?
Most of the linguists, like Kuiper, also says that it is the only possibility is that in Indian languages, among Indian languages, This is the only language isolate.
Yeah.
So that is very peculiar.
Yeah. In fact, I want to go further. Burushaski is another language spoken in Balochistan province of present Pakistan. That's also considered as isolate.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Hello. But Anvita Appi in her article, in the IJDL, Andaman there is one isolate language isolate.
Yeah. In fact, I did not touch upon the Andamanese languages, but you see, first of all, Andamanese is not known to large scholars.
Yes.
It's only Anvita Abhi's work. We have not been able to access everything.
Yes.
So possibility is there. In fact, one side she says Andamanese is group of languages. It is separate family. Okay, and within that, if she considers there's an isolate, we don't know. We don't know really. In fact, I have not touched upon many things. It's not possible to cover everything.
Yes, sir.
Please, Professor Karnagaran, sir.
Yes. I have a comment with reference to Dr. Rajsekharan's question which he raised. My comment is, you see, that in world languages, there are two major groups, SVO and SOV, right? So you cannot always go by that kind of structure to decide the languages in language families. Though Professor Nagaraja is quite right that it is not always possible to go by the syntactic structure. So as you said, one should go through the lexical usages. That only differentiates number of social problems, culture-based lexical items and so on. So you have to go by that and decide the type of comparisons, sound comparisons or other semantic variations. You see, that's very important. That's why I say your assumption is quite right. You go by the lexical usages and see whether any comparative structure is possible, right? That's what we find in Dravidian languages or Indo-Aryan languages. Maybe some languages are a little different or totally different sometimes. But if you go by lexical usages, then definitely I am sure you can identify the correspondences to establish even the subgroupings in a language family, right? Especially like Dravidian subgroupings or even Indo-Aryan subgroupings or other classifications within the language family.
Quite right. Quite right.
That's what I feel.
In fact, I would like draw your attention. Those who are interested in this may look at lexicostatistics. Study, just read one or two papers on lexicostatistics. They will get an idea about that.
Oh yeah, right.
Why words are important? Why words are important? Thank you. Thank you for your.
It's possible.
Professor Rangan, sir.
Hello.
Rangan. Greetings.
Okay. Hello. Very nice to see you.
Thank you. It's so nice occasion.
Yes.
I should thank the organizers for giving this occasion. I could meet all of you.
Very nice. I will go from the last point. When you say we have similarities, the common similarities, there are three things. Some similarities are maybe based on the genetic one.
So many aspects have been taken into account.
Yes, the other one is
inheritance, borrowing, shared thing, is chances, similarities. So many aspects have to be taken into account.
Let me finish it. One is genetically based one similarity. The second one is typological based similarities. The third one is a universal one. As we go, this one, the typological similarities, mostly when you talk about the word order and all these things, and the head noun where it comes and all these things, these are all mostly typological similarities. So the languages across the families, they may share. So that's what you are trying to say in this one. And the third one is the when we talk about the genetic one, yes, there are similarities, but once you establish a similarity, then you have to show the changes also, variations, in that is the innovations in each language. So that is a very important thing. So that way, if it is genetically of a common one, then we should go from the sharing features, then the variation also, or the changes.
Quite right.
So this is just from the one. There are two comments I want to make. The other one, when we talk about the Proto-Dravidian, you said that the voiceless is the only one as a consonants, Proto-Dravidian consonants. Of course, this is the majority view. There was another competing hypothesis. Both voiceless and voiced were the Proto-Dravidian phonemes. That was also another view. For example, Bloch and Chatterjee and all these people, they had this view also. So both the views, that is the only voiceless phoneme consonants.
Right. Yeah.
And now, even that voiced one, our Professor Umamaheshwar Rao is the one who is arguing for the voiced phoneme should be as a Proto-Dravidian one. This is just a comment. The second one is, when you talk about the Santali, are they geographically contiguous? Just I am asking you, just I want to get, when we talk about the Santali, it's a large population. Are they contiguous geographically, or?
You can see that Orissa, Jharkhand, West Bengal, and Assam. Assam is secondary.
Contiguous.
Yeah, almost, but some breaks are there.
Because what I want to say is
different states are there. Different states, you know, state boundaries are there, so that creates problems in education and all.
So, similar thing
unity will not be there.
Okay. Similarly, we see in Ooty also. Since the Nilagiri is covered by Kerala, Karnataka, and then Tamil Nadu, we say that the tribal people are spread in 2 or 3 states, something like that. But unfortunately, this is the injustice we did in terms of administrative division. We said that it's the linguistic states, but not purely, but it's a major language linguistic states. But when we talk about the tribal languages, it is purely an injustice done to them. So there should be a kind of tribal states. The administration has to create some tribal language, wherever there are tribal languages together, then there must be small, just like a union territories, there should be have a kind of tribal states in different, whenever they are spoken geographically, they should have a common administration. Then that will do justice for those people. This is just an observation.
Yeah, you are right. A lot of things need to be done, should be done for the upliftment of the tribals, the different people, anybody for that matter. But this the concept of state boundary should be removed if possible. They should have some other type of administrative zones. Only meant for administration, not for other purposes. Like for instance, Betta Kuruba is there in Karnataka. Similar people are there in Tamil Nadu, in Kerala. When it comes to education issue,
they are divided.
Karnataka needs to study in Kannada, in Malayalam, in Tamil. So the unity is gone there. So, yeah, you are right, sir. It's a more serious problem.
We have to demand the tribal states or tribal union territories, whatever it may be.
In fact, they need to demand, not we.
No. What I am telling you.
Happen. Yeah, I know. I understood your point.
That idea should go to them.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Naraj sir.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting to note that some of the languages are isolated. And scholars like you could not group them into a particular family. What else you can expect from the juniors? You said there is no folklore, and also there is no anything else to collect. And my curiosity is, how did you get to that community? What prompted you to take up this work? And if you say there are quite possible things to be studied, what are those gray areas?
The credit goes to earlier scholars. One of our Indian scholars, Sudhi Bhushan Bhattacharya. In 1957 itself, he conducted a fieldwork on these people, and he brought out a word list. And he doubted whether, because for a long time, even Grierson, they thought that somehow Nihali is a member of Munda group, or some people doubted it. Then they thought probably at least at the Austro-Asiatic higher level, it should belong to that one. Whereas Sudhi Bhushan Bhattacharya studied it and doubted that probably it is not a Munda language. So that prompted me to take it up, because not many works were there. After Sudhi Bhushan Bhattacharya, 1957, he published one paper in Indian linguistics. Nothing had come out. I took it up in 1998, and after 10 years, I could bring out a monograph. And I'm definitely now sure that it is an isolate. It has nothing to do with Munda languages. That is what, like even Anvita Abhi says in her book, it is a Munda language. Some scholars say, but my data shows that it is not. And scholars should take it up further and try to study it. In fact, every word needs to be studied to find out, because the number of vocabulary is limited. Therefore, every word is crucial. So they need to identify whether it shows any similarity with any other known languages, whether it is Brahui, Gondi, any language, and then come up with some suggestion whether it can be grouped with any language family or something. So this orphan age status should be removed if possible. I'll be very happy if somebody can do that.
Also, you mentioned that there is nothing, interesting aspects of culture.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the case.
But we don't know.
Because you see, they are landless laborers. They don't have any land. They cannot claim that there is something is their village, their own village. They live in part of a village as just one side. The dominant groups are always there somewhere, some other people. They are a minority everywhere. The total number itself is 3,000, around 3,000. Of course, the more people are there, but they have given up their language. Those who speak the language, they are around 3,000, as far as my calculation goes. I visited all the 6 villages. So they don't celebrate any festival. They celebrate Holi. Of course, Holi is not their festival as such. It is a Hindu festival, and they celebrate in similar way. They sing Hindi songs. They don't have any folklore or anything. Of course, I could collect some stories, but I'm not sure whether they are their own stories. It could be that they know the story. They have given me the story. I have put them in my book. I don't say it is strictly the folklore, their folklore.
Thank you.
So that is the status. Yeah.
Professor.
Yeah.
Shankar, sir, giving that from your comprehensive lecture, is it what I can understand is that at the vocabulary level, there are many different words are there, and perhaps from Sanskrit also. So can
they appear to be okay, go ahead.
My curiosity is that can this be a starting point to see to look or probe more into this Nihali language, sir? From the vocabulary points of view.
Somebody should take
there are no culture, no folklore things, and even other grammatical things also. So it looks a very mysterious language from your lecture to understand it. But the only hope is that
you are right. I'll be very happy if somebody takes up and studies further.
Yes. So I just thought that maybe the vocabulary, like the numerals, can be a starting point to probe more into this language.
Quite true. Quite true.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks. Your work on Khasi language is very extensive work you've done on Khasi. There's a very good contribution from your side. You have gone through that book also.
I personally wish I could do more, but well, with the constraints of time and energy, whatever possible little thing I have done, I'm happy if it is appreciated by scholars. Thank you very much.
Okay, sir. Happy Teacher Day. Greetings to you, sir, from our side.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. Nice to listen to your lecture, sir. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Sir, if no question, we can go to vote of thanks.
Kamachi, since Professor Perumalsamy has joined, so since he worked on, in Mother Tongue Survey of India.
Yeah, you can ask him if he has got any question.
Sir, Perumalsamy.
Yeah, good evening to.
Yeah, please tell me.
Yeah. Sir, good evening, sir, and good evening to all of my professors.
Sir, good evening, Perumal.
Good evening. You're the mother tongue speaker of Tamil, and you know the you have done on your Austroasiatic for your research, and you had been living in Pune for Indo-Aryan. Indo-Aryan also you have done quite bit. So your research experience, your personal experience, and your research on this particular language, yes, it gives a clear-cut understanding that it is an isolate. From your own experience, you have done it, sir. Yeah. And yeah, that will be a starting point for our Indian scholars to look into these type of small languages, like what you started with, like Linguistic Survey of India. Grierson, when he pointed out for this Maltho and for Crook, they have migrated from southern part and they moved to probably from Karnataka. They migrated from there to and settled in both this Bihar and Orissa. So like that, during that period, this community also might have somehow that we don't have any anthropological features. So a kind of study which incorporates this anthropological features, migration and language contact, all these things, if we have taken into account and if we study further, then we will come to know about this language isolate, sir.
Yeah, it would be nice if somebody can pick it up and start working on.
Yeah.
Maybe
Thank
you
you
can
for
guide
your
somebody.
presentation, sir.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
For your nice presentation.
Yeah. Thank
you. Sir, Vasu, sir.
Thank you very much for your inspiring talk, and we have learned so much today about not only just Nihali language, but about that language isolate concept. We have talked so much about why language is an isolate language and how it can't be a part of other languages, and also about the relationship between the genetic relationship between Nihali and other languages, particularly the striking vocabulary similarities you mentioned about. It still needs more research on that. Particularly the basic vocabularies. When you have a basic vocabulary from other languages, there must be some interesting phenomenon going on. We can't simply ignore that the basic vocabularies are simply borrowed words.
Yeah.
So ear, for example, and langu, for example. So they can be just an accidental similarities.
Yeah.
So we need more research on that.
Yeah.
So in that sense, your book is really an inspiring book, and it will give an opportunity for other scholars to pursue on studying all the, not just Nihali, all the other languages in that northeast region. Like you have done a lot of work. I'm not sure how much more you can do, but we will be very. It would be nice for you to embark on that But definitely you have done a great job. And your book and your contribution will be remembered forever, and the linguist will take on and contribute further more. Thank you for your inspiring talk.
Thank you very much for the patient hearing. I thank all of you for very valued comments about the topic concern. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Good night. Good night.
Thank you, sir. Please, Palani Rajan.
Yes, sir. I am here. Okay. Good evening to all. First of all, I would like to thank all my teachers and all the teachers. Is it audible, sir?
Yes.
Audible. Most respected today distinguished guest, Professor K.S. Nagaraja, sir, former head Department of Linguistics, Deccan College, Pune. And my sincere thanks to Professor K. Karnakaran, former Vice Chancellor and the President of Tamil Mozhiyal Sangam, and your wonderful subject and the support of the Encourage and the entire team. Professor G. Balasubramanian, Vice Chancellor and the Secretary of Tamil Mozhiyal Sangam, also sincere thanks to all the people for support and encourage all the students. And more people, and I would like to other people sincere thanks to Dr. Kamachi from Annamalai University, Dr. Kumaresan from Annamalai University, other team of technical support from the various parts and the various participants, various across the India and other universities, institutions, colleges, or research centers, from all the teachers and students, research scholars, all people who thanks and one and all, thanks all of you. Thank you very much, sir.
Please, Asu, sir.
Yes, sir. And again, the things go to Professor all the people, thank you very much. And go for Nagaraja sir, they give most of the important points in the lectures. The grammar of Nagali, all is for the four major families. It touched on this more major families. The origin of languages, how Dravidian vowel system is a short and long vowel system, is a Proto-Dravidian that kept up. And first that, and the Tibeto-Burman will go for about 200 languages, was included. And the retrieval sound is a major area in Dravidian features. It's not in the Sanskrit features. So they are touched on this, all these areas. Most is covered all the language, how documented, how origin of the language and classified, and the group of the languages. These are most and stimulate of our young scholars and researchers. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your initiative talk. And other people's participators in various countries, India, abroad, all the people. I would like to thank once again all the participants who participate in the program. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you once again. And especially the introduced what Professor Vasu Ranganathan is introduced the subject and also is introductory our chief guest today. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Naraj sir, tumba thanks, sir. No.
Thank you, Naraj sir.
Good night, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Good night.
All of you, good night. Except Professor Vasu.
Good morning. Good morning to Professor Vasu.
Good morning, Professor Vasu.
Good morning, Vasu.